Daniel Harper hadn't been on a real date in nearly 6 years. Not since the accident, not since his world had narrowed to hospital corridors, therapy schedules, and the quiet resilience of a little boy who never complained, even when life demanded more courage than most adults ever needed. That morning, as Daniel buttoned his shirt with careful hands, he caught his reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Tired eyes, lines of worry, a heart full of love and fear. "Dad, are you nervous?" Noah asked from behind him. Daniel turned. His 8-year-old son sat in his wheelchair near the doorway, his small fingers resting on the armrests, eyes bright with curiosity. The wheelchair had become part of their life after a drunk driver changed everything one rainy night. Noah survived. Daniel's wife didn't. Since then, father and son had learned how to move forward together, even when the path was steep. "A little," Daniel admitted with a soft smile. "But it's okay to be nervous." Noah grinned. "Mom used to say that meant you cared." Daniel swallowed hard. She did. The date hadn't been Daniel's idea. Not at first. His sister had insisted he try again, said he deserved companionship, that Noah deserved to see his father smile at someone who wasn't a nurse or a teacher. After weeks of hesitation, Daniel finally agreed to a casual coffee meetup with a woman named Emily, whom he'd met through a single-parent support group. She knew he had a son. She knew Noah used a wheelchair. She'd said she didn't mind. Still, Daniel knew how "I don't mind" often meant "I don't understand." What Emily didn't know, what Daniel hadn't said outright, was that Noah would be coming with him, not because Daniel wanted to test anyone, but because he couldn't imagine beginning anything meaningful without his son being part of it. The cafe was warm and bright, filled with soft chatter and the smell of fresh pastries. Daniel guided Noah carefully through the door, feeling the familiar mix of eyes glancing their way, some curious, some sympathetic, some uncomfortable. He pretended not to notice, focusing instead on finding a table near the window. They hadn't been seated long when Emily arrived. She was pretty in an effortless way, neatly styled hair, confident walk, eyes scanning the room until they landed on Daniel. Her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second when she noticed Noah, too quick for some to catch, too slow for Daniel to miss. "Oh," Emily said, approaching the table. "Hi, you must be Daniel." "Yes," he replied, standing slightly. "And this is my son, Noah." Noah waved. "Hi." Emily smiled back, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hello," she said, then turned back to Daniel. "I didn't realize he'd be joining us." Daniel nodded calmly. "I hope that's okay." "Of course," she said quickly. "I just thought it was, a date." "It is," Daniel said gently. "This is my life." An awkward pause settled between them. Emily sat, adjusting her bag, glancing around as if suddenly aware of the space the wheelchair took. She ordered quickly, kept conversation polite but distant. She asked Daniel about work, about the weather, about the cafe, but never about Noah. No one noticed. He always did. Daniel watched his son's smile fade just a little as Emily spoke over him, redirected questions, avoided eye contact. When Noah tried to tell a joke, she laughed late, distracted. When he asked her what her favorite superhero was, she hesitated, then gave a generic answer. Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't blame her, not exactly. Not everyone was prepared for this kind of reality. But the familiar disappointment crept in, heavy and exhausting. This was why he hadn't dated. This was why he stayed home. Emily checked her phone more than once. "I just remembered I have an early meeting tomorrow," she said, finally standing. "This was nice, though." Daniel smiled politely. "Thank you for coming." She nodded, waved vaguely at Noah, and left. The silence afterward felt loud. "I didn't do anything wrong, did I?" Noah asked quietly. Daniel knelt beside him, heartbreaking. "No, buddy, you were perfect." They were halfway through their drinks when a voice spoke from behind them. "Hey, I hope this isn't weird, but can I say something?" Daniel turned. A woman stood there, holding a tray with 2 coffees and a cookie balanced precariously on top. She looked slightly flustered, hair pulled into a loose ponytail, eyes kind and unsure. "I couldn't help noticing," she said softly. "Your son told a great joke earlier. About the penguin?" Noah's face lit up. "You heard that?" She smiled fully this time. "I did, and I laughed. Just internally." Daniel stood surprised. "I'm Daniel." "I'm Claire," she said. "And I hope it's okay, but I thought he might like this." She set the cookie gently in front of Noah. "Chocolate chip, my favorite." Noah looked at Daniel, who nodded. "Thank you," Noah said shyly. Claire pulled up a chair without hesitation. She asked Noah about school, about his favorite games, about what kind of music he liked. She listened, really listened. When Noah talked about his wheelchair, she didn't look away, she didn't rush past it. She asked questions like it was normal, like he was normal, because he was. Daniel felt something loosen inside him. Claire eventually turned to Daniel. "I'm sorry if this is forward," she said, "but I just wanted you to know. I think you're doing an incredible job." Daniel's throat tightened. "You don't even know us." She smiled softly. "I know kindness when I see it." For the first time that day, maybe in years, Daniel felt seen, not as a burden, not as a problem, but as a father doing his best. And he had no idea that this small moment of kindness was about to change everything. Claire hadn't planned on staying longer than a few minutes. She'd only meant to offer a smile, a cookie, a reminder that the world wasn't always cold. But as Noah spoke, animated, thoughtful, eager to be heard, she found herself sinking into the chair as if she belonged there. Daniel watched the exchange quietly, half waiting for the moment she might grow uncomfortable, half afraid of hoping too much. Noah told her about his favorite science experiments, about the model solar system he was building at school, about how his wheelchair had racing stripes because everything goes faster with racing stripes. Claire laughed freely, the sound warm and genuine. She didn't speak over him or glance at her phone. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, fully present. "I like you," Noah said suddenly. Daniel's heart skipped. "Noah, it's okay," Claire said gently. "I like you too." The simplicity of it stunned Daniel. When the began to empty, Claire finally stood. "I should get going," she said, then hesitated. "But would it be okay if I saw you both again?" Daniel felt the question settle deep in his chest. "We'd like that." Their next meeting wasn't labeled a date. It was a walk in the park, slow and unhurried. Claire brought sidewalk chalk. Noah drew galaxies on the pavement while Daniel and Claire talked nearby. She asked about the accident, not with pity, but with care. She didn't rush his answers. She didn't look away when grief flickered across his face. "You don't have to be strong all the time," she said quietly. Daniel looked at her, surprised. "Most people expect me to be." She shook her head. "Noah needs a dad, not a statue." Those words stayed with him. Over the next few weeks, Claire became a gentle presence in their lives. She joined them at the Science Museum, helped Noah paint a wooden robot, sat with Daniel during physical therapy appointments when Noah was tired. She never acted like she was doing them a favor. She simply showed up. Daniel noticed how Noah laughed more easily around her, how he asked if Claire was coming before he even asked what was for dinner. It scared Daniel to let someone matter again, but it also healed something he hadn't realized was still bleeding. One evening, after Noah had fallen asleep during a movie, Claire and Daniel sat quietly in the living room. "You know," she said softly, "I didn't come over here thinking I'd meet someone." Daniel smiled faintly. "Neither did I." She studied him. "You don't talk much about yourself," he exhaled, "because most of me is tied to him." He nodded toward Noah's room. "And the rest?" she asked. He hesitated. "I don't know who I am without being needed." Claire didn't answer right away. She reached over and rested her hand gently over his. "Maybe you're allowed to be both." The touch wasn't dramatic, but it sent warmth through him. Daniel realized something then. Claire wasn't extraordinary because she treated Noah kindly. She was extraordinary because she treated kindness as normal. But he also knew life wasn't simple. Loving a man with a disabled child meant sacrifices, appointments, setbacks, limits. Daniel wondered how long kindness could survive reality. He would soon find out. The first real test came quietly, without warning, the way life often delivers its hardest lessons. Noah woke one morning with a fever and sharp pain in his legs, the kind that made his hands tremble as Daniel helped him into the wheelchair. Daniel recognized the signs immediately. It was one of those complications the doctors had warned about, flare-ups that could arrive suddenly and demand everything. Daniel canceled work, packed a bag, and called the hospital. As he hung up, he hesitated before dialing Claire's number. He didn't want to scare her. He didn't want her to feel obligated. But before he could decide, his phone buzzed. "How's Noah today?" Claire asked. Daniel exhaled. "We're heading to the hospital." "I'll meet you there," she said without pause. At the hospital, hours stretched thin. Machines beeped. Nurses came and went. Daniel sat stiffly beside Noah's bed, exhaustion etched into his face. Claire arrived with coffee, a small blanket, and a quiet presence that didn't demand attention. She knelt beside Noah, asking if he wanted to hear a story, and read softly until he fell asleep. Daniel watched her from across the room, his chest tight, not with fear, but with something heavier, gratitude mixed with terror, because he knew this was the reality. Not park walks, not chalk drawings. This. When the doctor finally spoke to them, Claire listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions. Later in the hallway, Daniel leaned against the wall, eyes closed. "You don't have to stay," he said, voice tired. "I know," she replied. "But I want to." That night, when Noah was stable and sleeping, Daniel drove Claire home. The silence in the car felt different, charged, fragile. "This is what it's like," he said quietly. "It doesn't get easier, just different." Claire nodded. "I didn't think it would be easy, but you don't know how hard," he pressed, fear slipping through his calm. "There will be days when plans fall apart, when you come second, when I have nothing left to give." She turned to him fully. "Daniel, I'm not here because it's convenient." He said nothing. He couldn't. Over the next weeks, the strain continued. Noah needed more therapy. Daniel's sleep suffered. Claire saw him at his worst, snapping when overwhelmed, shutting down when guilt took over. She saw the nights he sat on the floor outside Noah's room, shoulders shaking silently. One evening, Daniel finally broke. "I'm tired," he said hoarsely, "and I'm scared that if you stay, you'll resent us." Claire knelt in front of him. Loving someone doesn't mean pretending it's easy. It means choosing to stay even when it isn't. "But what if one day you don't want to?" he asked. She didn't dismiss the question. "Then I'll tell you, but don't push me away because you're afraid." That honesty shook him. The real breaking point came when Noah overheard an argument Daniel hadn't meant for him to hear. Daniel had told Claire he needed space, that maybe it was better if she stepped back before things became too complicated. Later that night, Noah wheeled into the living room. "Is Claire leaving because of me?" Daniel's heart shattered. "No, never because of you. But she stays because of me too," Noah said quietly. "And that's okay." Daniel knelt, tears burning. "I just don't want anyone hurting you." Noah smiled sadly. "Dad, she doesn't look at me like I'm a problem." Those words changed everything. The next day, Daniel went to Claire's apartment. He didn't bring explanations. He brought honesty. "I'm afraid," he said simply, "but I don't want fear making my choices anymore." Claire stepped forward and hugged him, firm, grounding. "Then let's be afraid together." For the first time since the accident, Daniel believed that kindness could survive reality, not because it was naive, but because it was strong. And he realized something profound. Claire wasn't kind because life was gentle. She was kind because she chose to be. especially when it wasn't. Life had a way of testing love when it was at its most fragile. Daniel and Claire were growing closer, finding their rhythm amid hospital visits, school projects, and therapy sessions. But the outside world didn't always understand. A chance encounter at the park soon reminded Daniel how judgment could sting. It started innocently enough. They were pushing Noah along the park's winding paths, Claire beside him, laughing as he pretended his wheelchair was a race car. Daniel followed, grateful for the simplicity of the moment. But then, a group of teenagers passed by, whispering, pointing, some laughing cruelly. "Why does he even go out?" one muttered. "Why would she stay with a guy like that?" Claire heard it too. She didn't flinch. She didn't whisper reassurances to Daniel or Noah. She squared her shoulders and held Noah's hand tightly. "Let's ignore them," she said softly. "We know the truth. That's all that matters." Daniel watched her, heart pounding. He had faced the world alone before, but he had never seen someone stand so firmly without hesitation, not because of courage alone, but because of compassion and conviction. It was a strength he had rarely encountered. He felt a surge of pride, but also relief. Noah deserved this. He deserved someone who would protect not just his body, but his dignity. Later that week, all setback tested them again. Noah's wheelchair broke mid-therapy session. Daniel tried to fix it himself, frustration simmering as the chair's mechanics refused to cooperate. Claire noticed his tension, stayed calm, and instead of judging or offering empty reassurances, she helped him methodically, handing him tools, asking questions that guided him toward solutions. Noah laughed through it all, enjoying the collaborative effort, oblivious to the stress swirling around him. Claire never once made it about inconvenience or pity. To her, it was simply life, and they faced it together. Daniel began to understand what real partnership meant. It wasn't about helping when it was easy. It was about showing up when life was messy, uncomfortable, inconvenient, and still being present. Claire never wavered. She didn't sugarcoat reality, but she didn't run either. She accepted it all, seeing the people beneath the circumstances, and Daniel realized he could, finally, let someone in. Even with Claire's unwavering support, societal pressures lurked. Casual acquaintances, friends, even distant relatives questioned Daniel's decisions. "Are you sure she's ready for this?" a coworker asked. "Dating a man with a disabled child is complicated." Daniel clenched his fists, frustrated by their condescension. Claire overheard part of the conversation. Later, she took his hand in private. "Let them talk," she said. "We're the only ones who need to understand this." The words, simple yet profound, became their mantra. Then came the pivotal moment, the moment Daniel realized how much Claire's kindness had transformed not only his life, but Noah's sense of self. A school talent show. Noah was nervous. It had been months since he had performed in front of a crowd. He tried to decline, but Daniel encouraged him gently, and Claire offered to help with preparation. She practiced songs with Noah, AD, adjusted his wheelchair to give him better stage visibility, and encouraged him through every stumble. Not once did she complain about the extra effort or the time required. She treated him like any other child, a young boy with a talent and a dream, not a burden. The night of the show, Daniel and Claire sat in the front row, hearts tight with anticipation. Noah rolled onto the stage, music playing softly, nerves showing in his posture. Then, as if Claire had planted courage in his heart, he smiled. He performed with grace, confidence building with every note. The audience clapped, some in awe, some in surprise. But Noah noticed only the faces he trusted, his father and Claire. The warmth in their eyes gave him strength. And Daniel, watching, realized that kindness wasn't just about comfort. It was about giving someone the courage to shine despite fear. After the show, as they walked home, Noah chatting excitedly about the applause. Daniel stopped. He looked at Claire, words failing him. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "You've changed us." Claire laughed softly, shaking her head. "You don't need to say anything," she replied. "Just let me be part of your life." Daniel wanted to say more, wanted to tell her she wasn't just part of their life, she was their heartbeat. But words fell short. Instead, he nodded, letting his actions speak. From that day forward, he resolved to never underestimate what kindness could do, not just for others, but for himself, for Noah, for them all. Yet despite the growing harmony, challenges persisted. A work trip threatened to pull Daniel away from his commitments. Claire didn't complain. Instead, she planned for Noah's needs, coordinating with therapists and school staff, showing Daniel that support could be steady even in absence. When he returned, exhausted, he found her waiting with a smile, dinner ready, and the house calm. The company. Contrast between her patience and the impatience of the world outside his door struck him. She didn't perform kindness, she embodied it. Daniel knew then that he couldn't simply hope for a future with her. He had to actively choose it, day after day, through hardship and monotony alike. And he realized that Claire's true gift wasn't her charm or her warmth, it was her unwavering presence. She didn't offer sympathy, she didn't offer pity. She offered herself fully, without conditions, without hesitation. And in doing so, she showed Daniel and Noah what love, real love, looked like. That evening, as they tucked Noah into bed, Claire whispered to Daniel, "You see, life is messy, but it doesn't have to be lonely." Daniel held her hand, words unnecessary. He understood. The trials weren't over. There would be more hospital visits, more setbacks, more whispered judgments from strangers who couldn't see the heart beneath. But for the first time in years, Daniel felt prepared. Not because he was strong alone, but because they were strong together. And that was the truest measure of kindness and love. The months that followed were filled with small victories and quiet celebrations. Noah's progress in therapy was steady, punctuated by moments of laughter and pride, and Daniel watched it all with a heart that had begun to trust again. Claire remained a constant presence, not as a savior, but as an unwavering companion. She joined them in appointments, cheered the loudest at school events, and celebrated every little achievement as if it were her own. Through her actions, Daniel and Noah learned a truth that was simple but transformative. Kindness, when genuine, created a foundation stronger than fear, stronger than loss, stronger than pain. Daniel himself began to change. He no longer carried the weight of the world alone. The exhaustion, the stress, and the grief were still there, but shared with someone who chose to stand beside him, they became bearable. Claire's presence didn't erase the hardships, but it made the trials manageable. He realized that true partnership wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up every day, even when life was messy. The turning point came one sunny afternoon. Noah had been accepted into a new adaptive sports program, something he had wanted for months. Daniel and Claire wheeled him to the park for his first session. The gleam in Noah's eyes when he saw the other children, each with their own challenges and triumphs, reminded Daniel of a truth he had sometimes forgotten. His son's life was full, not defined by what he could not do, but by what he could. Claire's hand rested lightly on his shoulder, her smile encouraging, unwavering. Noah waved at her, laughter spilling over as he joined the group. Daniel watched, heart swelling, as she whispered softly to him, "This is what life can be, even after loss. Look at him." He did. And he realized that, finally, he could breathe. As summer turned to autumn, their bond deepened. Claire became a part of their family in ways Daniel had once feared impossible. She learned to anticipate Noah's needs without being intrusive, and she laughed with him freely, never treating him as fragile or limited. Daniel, in turn, allowed himself to love again, not cautiously, but openly, inspired by the trust he saw reflected in Claire's eyes. The house, once quiet and heavy with absence, now hummed with warmth and laughter. One evening, after a long day of therapy and school, they all sat together on the porch, sharing a simple dinner. Noah, exhausted but happy, leaned against Daniel, telling Claire about the new friends he had made. Daniel listened, marveling at the ease between them. Claire smiled at Noah's stories, then glanced at him. Their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement passing. Between them, everything had changed. She hadn't just shown kindness, she had built a bridge over their pain and fear, and together, they had crossed it. Later that night, after Noah was asleep, Daniel found himself in the living room with Claire, the quiet of the house wrapping around them. He reached for her hand, holding it gently. "I don't know how to say this without sounding foolish," he began, voice low, "but you've changed everything for us." Claire leaned closer, resting her head against his shoulder. "Not me," she said softly. "You chose to let me in. I didn't know I could trust anyone again," he admitted. "But you made it easy." She laughed lightly, the sound warm and comforting. "That's what love does," she said. "It makes the impossible feel possible." Weeks later, Daniel invited Claire to a quiet dinner at home, a small gesture, but meaningful. He had been hesitant at first, afraid of pushing too fast, afraid of repeating mistakes. But as they sat across from each other, sharing simple pasta and stories about the day, he realized something essential. Love didn't have to be grand to be real. It didn't need fanfare or perfection. It needed honesty, presence, and unwavering kindness. Noah, sensing the mood, piped up with a grin. "You guys are weird," he said, laughing. "But I like it." Claire ruffled his hair. "We're your weird family," she said. Daniel smiled, heart full. This little family, built on resilience, honesty, and kindness, was everything he had ever needed. He no longer feared the world's judgment or the limitations of circumstance. With Claire beside him, he knew they could face anything together. The final confirmation of their bond came unexpectedly. One crisp autumn morning, while Noah was at school, Daniel and Claire walked through the park, leaves crunching beneath their feet. Daniel stopped, turning to her. "I spent so long protecting him, protecting both of us, and I realize now protection isn't enough. I want to love fully every day, even when it's hard." Claire's eyes glistened. "You've already done that," she said softly. "Just by letting me be here." He took a deep breath, the words heavy with emotion. "I want to ask you something officially." She tilted her head, curious. "Will you be part of our family? Not just as a girlfriend, but as someone who chooses to be with us no matter what." Tears filled her eyes. "I already am," she whispered. "I wouldn't want it any other way." They embraced, the world around them fading. For once, Daniel felt fully seen, not as a man carrying loss and responsibility, but as a father, a partner, and a human capable of love. Claire's kindness had never been performative. It had been intentional, consistent, and unwavering, and in return, she had earned something precious, the trust and hearts of a father and son who had once believed love was too fragile for them. When Noah came home that afternoon, he found his father and Claire sitting on the porch, holding hands, smiling. "Did you make a deal?" he asked, playful but knowing. Daniel laughed, ruffling his son's hair. "We made a promise." Claire smiled at Noah, "One we intend to keep." And in that moment, Daniel realized that true love and true kindness wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about avoiding difficulty. It was about showing up, fully, without hesitation, and choosing one another even when life demanded everything. With Claire, he had found someone who didn't just accept them, but embraced them. And for the first time since tragedy had struck, he felt whole. Together, they faced the world, not as a man and a boy struggling alone, but as a family bound by love, kindness, and the unwavering courage to be there for each other, no matter what came next.